Hey folks, it's Deke and I'm back for round 3 with my good pal Jeff Steven on the 1002nd album. And our topic of conversation today is what we would consider our personal top 5 albums from 1992 and 1993. Let's do this!
Hi, I'm Jeff Steven, and you're listening to the 1002nd Album Podcast. This season, we're talking about must-hear lists as I continue to ask people that are important to me all about the music that's important to them. Enjoy! This is the 1002nd Album Podcast. I'm Jeff Steven, and today is a good day because anytime you get to talk to your favorite person from Thunder Bay is a good day. Please welcome back, yet again, Deke.
Hey, Mr. Steven. I'm glad to be back in your class.
I have a feeling I'll get some education today as well, which is always good. And yes, and speaking of class, I was very much in school in the years 1992 and 93, which is our years of discussion today. But I'm curious, what was a day in the life like for Deke back in 92, 93?
Well, I was working full time, and the summers of 92, especially 92, was a lot of concerts. It almost seemed like we were going out of town every 2 to 3 weeks. We saw Ozzy on his first official farewell, No More Tours tour. And then a few weeks after that, we're back down in the States to see Tesla, and a few weeks after that, we're back to Duluth to see Def Leppard, and a few weeks after that, we're out to Winnipeg to see Bryan Adams, Steve Miller, Extreme, Sash Jordan. Yeah, just a ton of shows. And then into 93, basically the same thing, McCartney in Winnipeg, Paul McCartney, and one of the bands that's my topic of conversation, which I'll remain anonymous about until we get to them. Came to town, and it was just a lot of fun times and memories, and it's just crazy to think that 30, 32, 33 years have just passed like nothing, but tell my bald spot that.
Yeah. Nice. That sounds like a great way to spend a couple of years. Def Leppard, McCartney, Bryan Adams, that all sounds perfect. For me, like I would have been like grade 5, 6 or so. And so for me, 92, 93, I always think of the Toronto sports. We even have a VHS of the Blue Jays back to back, like the sort of celebrating the two World Series wins there. And it was at some point in 92, I remember we had a family friend come over and he talked about watching the Coca-Cola countdown on Much Music. And once, I think that week, the Black Crowes Remedy was #1. And I was also this, what is this Coca-Cola countdown of which you speak? And from then on, I just got fully immersed in music. I guess the medium at the time would have been cassettes. And so a lot of my 92, 93 albums here would have been on the cassette format. But I think I was really into videos at that time, and the full albums came later. But so some of these would have been albums I got into after the fact, but still plenty of gems in that 2-year window for sure.
Actually, there was. And once we figured out this topic of conversation, I realized that, like I told you, it's kind of given me a migraine, but in a good way.
There aren't too many favorable migraines, but this would be one of them.
And so, if you're all right, I'd just like to give you my honorable list of albums from 1990, 92, 93, which are from my own personal collection, which I've easily could have chatted about here in our discussion. First of all, a lot of people who know me are not going to be surprised by some of these picks or most of these picks. So here we go. Kiss with Revenge, Kiss Alive, 3, Iron Maiden with Fear of the Dark, Megadeth with Countdown to Extinction, REM, Automatic for the People, Dream Theater with Images and Words, Extreme with 3 Sides to Every Story, Izzy Stradlin and the Juju Hounds with their debut, Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way, Last Action Hero, the soundtrack, I Mother Earth with Dig, Headstones with Picture of Health. And Jeff, please do not kick me out of the classroom, but I had to put the Tragically Hip fully, completely on the honorable mention list. Sorry, you're my favorite Kingston guy. I'm sorry to do this to you.
Oh, that's okay. The as long as you had multiple Kingston content there with the headstones and the
That's
honorable
right.
mention list too, so the Kingston's being name checked twice, so life is good, all is well. And I definitely had a few honorable mentions that made the cut. For me, Sloane Smeared was right on the edge there. Pavement Slanted and Enchanted. Smashing Pumpkins, Rage Against the Machine. I even one that I was close to putting on was, I'd argue, the most durable artist of the last 40 years or so would be Weird Al Yankovic, and he had a couple of great ones in that window with Off the Deep End and Alapalooza, but at least I couldn't find a way to sneak it all in. But lots of beauties there as well. And the I think I may reference one or two of your honorable mentions before all is said and done as well. So we'll stay tuned. But
Cool.
as for the ones that did make the top five, what was one of the ones that did sneak into your must hear five?
Well, my first one we'll go with will be an album that came out, or CD back at the time, came out in May of 80 or 93, sorry, is Robert Plant, Fate of Nations. To me, it's a great CD. Robert, he loaded it up 12 songs, and it was almost more of a Plant solo album. I mean, his first six albums are obviously solo albums, but they were band like albums where he almost had a band assembled for the first five, where this one, he kind of used various different musicians. And when I first heard the opening track, Calling to You, and the drums just like snap, crackle, and pop from the get go, I was on board. I mean, I love Robert's first five solo albums, from Pictures at 11 to Manic Nirvana in 1990, and everything in between, some a little more than others. But the crazy thing, Jeff, is going from 1989 into 90, I actually had more Plant solo albums than I did Zeppelin records. So
Yeah.
that changed when that crazy Four Symbols box set came out in 1990, and
Yes.
basically one stop Zeppelin shopping,
Yeah.
right? So I caught up that way. But, a lot of good stuff on that album, Down to the Sea, which, had a Middle Eastern vibe. And that's what he was doing. He was finally embracing his past, like Zeppelin and whatnot, because in the early 80s and those records, especially Principle of Moment and Shaken and Stirred, it's like when he went on tour, he didn't even want to acknowledge the past, and those records don't sound like Zeppelin. But by the time Now and Zen came out in 88, he started playing a few Zeppelin tracks live. So he slowly worked his way around it. So on this record, I almost find that, Mickey is totally embracing his past. And some of these songs have almost Jimmy Page like riffs, like the Memory song. Promised Land reminds me of something that could easily been on Manic Nirvana, the previous solo album to this. And of course, he had another huge hit with 29 Palms, which is a pretty great mid-tempo track. So yeah, that's my I'm rambling on about Robert Plant. Ramble on.
I was
But
gonna say,
but
like...
yeah, you know what? So I consider, yeah, it's still a great listen now and then. Like I can throw on the CD and still
Yeah.
enjoy it. Love to get it on vinyl, but it's at a ridiculous price. So
I can
that,
imagine, yeah. I really do like that song 29 Palms. And there's that little bit of his old Zeppelin vocals at the end where he's like, you, like where he just sort of jumps at the end, which
mhm,
yeah, great choice. Robert Plant, Fate of Nations, love it. I will go for my first one, which might not be entirely surprising. A band from Kingston, Ontario, the Tragically Hip, Fully Completely. Because for me, it's the one that started it all for me, where uh, the aforementioned Coca-Cola countdown. When I saw the video for Locked in the Trunk of a Car, I think my jaw just dropped and I was absolutely amazed. And so that was one of my early albums to have. And it's a great one. That's an argument for the side one, side two format, where Locked in the Trunk of a Car ends side one, and then Will Go Two is a nice, like a pleasant start to, not actually not too distant a cousin of a 29 Palms, where it's pleasant, and then before ramping it back up again with the title track and 50 Mission Cap. And yeah,
yeah.
so just a wonderful, wonderful tune. And at the time, it combined my two loves of hockey and music, where how 50 Mission Cap talks about that Bill Barilko hockey card. Pro
Mhm.
set was the hockey card set I collected, so it was fun to hear my hockey card collection being, name checked in a hip song too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a lot of history, and that was a hard one to leave off my top five, but
Yeah.
I figured it would sneak into yours.
And it's and there is that I like coming into these as well, thinking like I have a feeling Deke will mention this one, so I don't need to worry about if I go in a room, I have a feeling it'll get brought up as well. So,
That's awesome.
nice. So round two, what are you thinking for another tune from your must hear five?
Well, we go from Robert Plant in '93 to another album that has kind of connections, and that would be the self-titled Coverdale Page album. That when we go back, or just go back to the conversation about the Zeppelin box set from '90. I was so sure that they were going to put Zeppelin back together with a drummer and then hit the stadium trail. Like I thought that was a done deal. And supposedly, I guess they were trying to get it going. And for some reason, I guess Plant just said, nah, I'm just going to stick with my solo career. So then I guess Page does somehow, I guess John David Klodner, who's a big A&R guy with Geffen Records, he kind of put them together, which I'm sure probably jerked Robert Plant's chain a little bit because you know, of a guy like Coverdale, because back in the 80s, Robert Plant was calling David Coverdale David Cover Version because some of those Whitesnake songs were sounding like Zeppelin and whatnot. And so then fast forward 5 years later, and Jimmy Page is working with, I guess, the Enemy. So, but in saying all that, they put out a fantastic 61 minute, it's a full album, a lot of Zeppelin riffs, which would make sense because it's Jimmy Page, right?
Yeah.
The opening song, Shake My Tree, Waiting for You, a lot of power riffs. To me, it's a bombastic record in an era that bombastic wasn't really finding its home anymore. I mean, a lot of these bands, like a lot of my bands I was listening to, were losing their lead singers, Motley Crue, Maiden, Priest, all within a year. It was like bonkers, mass exodus. I mean, Joey Belladonna, he left Anthrax. I mean, it was like all these guys were just bailing ship for whatever
Mhm.
reasons. But Coverdale Page, I still to this day enjoy that record. I mean, it's got almost a bit of everything. It's got Zepp rock, and then you listen to a song on there at the back end of the record called Feeling Hot, and it's almost like an 80s Whitesnake hard rock song. And the album did well, it sold 1 million, but for some reason there was no tour in North America.
Yeah.
They just toured Japan, then it ended, and then somehow Coverdale went and did, I guess he probably rebooted Whitesnake in some form, and Jimmy Page hooked up with Robert Plant, and they put out Unleaded, and that took off. And then they did the Walking into Clarksdale record in '95, I think it was, and that was that. So Coverdale Page, I find, is just a record that's very highly regarded. I know the Snowman loves it as well. We're both waiting for it to be properly reissued. I don't even think it's on the streams. You have
All
to go to
right.
YouTube, I guess, to listen to it. Or I got as they call it, European version on
Yeah.
vinyl. Um, so yeah, you know what? It's a very good rock record.
Nice. And if you can find it, it's 61 minutes well spent as well. So that's
Boom,
good.
mic drop.
I like it. Nice. The this one I'm not my next one I'm not so sure we'll have overlap on this one, but another formative group for me was The Cure and their
Mhm.
1992 album Wish. And it's funny when I think back to the childhood bedroom, it was mostly hockey players, the Doug Gilmores, all that sort of thing. But I also had a poster of The Cure, a very unsettling one of the band, like assembling a snowman together. Which, speaking of the snowman, actually, a very different context here. And it was, yeah, just I adore this album. It's one of those great ones that has the whole range of emotions where. We've got a song that's as joyful as Friday I'm in Love, immediately followed up by something as bleak as like one of the saddest songs I think they have called Trust. And so that it sort of takes you all over the map. And I was lucky you mentioned this trying to find proper reissues. They had a great picture disc version of this a couple of years ago, and though even though I have the cassette, CD, and a couple of singles as well, it's like, oh, I can't resist the picture disc as well. So so yeah, but a wonderful one also from '92, The Cure, Wish.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, and they're still out there doing it.
They are, yeah. Oh, they I saw them in Montreal a couple years ago, and again, phenomenal. Like it would have been nice to see them, of course, at that time, but 30 odd years later, it was still they put on a tremendous show. So wonderful to see.
Nice. My next pick, and I guess the next couple, if we stay on course and we don't overlap one of our picks, which I'm thinking we might. Anyways, my pick is Stone Temple Pilots with Core.
Hmm.
Now, much music back in the day for all you young kids out there actually showed music videos.
There was a
And
time.
there was a time. And they started playing this band called Stone Temple Pilots, sex type thing. And I saw the video for that, and I was like, wow, you know what? Like, sure, this is like a different sound, but I could hear hooks and I could hear catchy chorus, and that's what I like, is that kind of style of music. So, the first went out and bought it, and I have to say, what a great opening 3-pack of tracks on this record: Dead and Bloated, Sex Type Thing, and Wicked Garden. I mean, they just pulled me in. Creep, it's a great acoustic, and Weiland, the late great Wayland, or however you pronounce his name, he's awesome vocalist. I mean, they were just an awesome band. But for me, you know me, man, I always like to talk about those end of the album gems. And for me, that's Plush. Like track 9 on the record, and it is such a classic. Catchy chorus. I mean, the hooks just pull me into that too, and I never ever have gotten sick of that song. And I never understood at the time, probably because I was basically an old man in 92, 93. They were getting, knocked off for comments about being a Pearl Jam ripoff band. And I thought, that's just kind of uncalled for. I mean, but they proved everybody wrong because, they kept pushing with their own sound on their following record, Purple, and then right into Tiny Music, their third release. And they were off and running. And those first 3 records to this day, I really love. But Core, do the power video on Much Music, swayed me into this Stone Temple Pilots. And I was lucky enough to see them open for the Rolling Stones on the Voodoo Lounge tour in
Oh,
'94
nice.
in Toronto. So I was able to see the original 4 guys. So that was pretty cool.
I like it. And I forgot about what a strong 1, 2, 3 punch that was to start. Yeah. And Dead and Bloated, how it's just like Scott Weiland's voice, just him, and then
Yeah.
everyone kicks in. So yeah,
Yeah.
great choice. The and if we were talking about '96, Tiny Music would be a contender for my 5 there as well. So
Yeah. There we go.
that's the speaking of late album gems, and speaking of ones that you had in your honorable mentions, my next one would be REM's Automatic for the
Hmm.
People, where although it starts strong with Drive and Try Not to Breathe and Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight, for me, the real magic of this album is the trio right at the very end, where Man on the Moon is track 10, Night Swimming 11, and Find the River to close it out at 12. And I'd argue that's probably about the strongest closing trifecta there is. Just what a way to wrap it up. And it's also an argument in favor. I know when people talk about REM, a lot of people say, "Oh, their earlier stuff is the strongest," or that sort of thing. But I really like the run they had in the '90s with this one and Monster and New Adventures in Hi-Fi. So I'd say, yeah, as a showcase of how great REM was in the '90s, Automatic for the People, my next choice.
And that's cool. It just shows you how strong the album was backloaded in material.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
wasn't filler, right?
yeah.
So
That's
that's a
it.
good pick. I mean, it was on my honorable mention as
Yeah.
well. I'm going to stay in 1992, and I am going to go with Alice in Chains' Dirt. Now, Alice in Chains kind of came on my radar in '91. I mean, I was reading about them in the magazines, and they were on this tour called Clash of the Titans with Slayer, Anthrax, and a bunch of other heavy bands. So I didn't really pay attention to them until I got tickets to go see Van Halen at the end of '91 in Winnipeg, and the opener was Alice in Chains. And when I told my brother, he's 10 years younger than me, so in 1991 he was 14 and I was 20, 23 going on 24. And when he found out it was Alice in Chains, like he was like, "Oh no way! Oh, they're so awesome!" So he gave me the cassette, and I listened to their cassette. And when I heard "Man in the Box," I thought same thing. Like these guys can nail out a real great chorus with hooks, but man, those lyrics were pretty heavy. I mean, the
Yeah.
old "sew your eyes shut and deny your maker." I'm like, whoa, like what's going on? Like this lyrically, these guys are like mean and nasty, and
Yeah.
they're just laying how it was. So crazy to see that shift in the music scene,
Yeah.
because I always tell people, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be that extreme. So when I saw, you go see Van Halen live, and you go from "We Die Young" and "Man in the Box" being played in front of you that night to a half hour later with Van Halen coming out and opening with "Pound Cake." I mean, you're getting two extremes there. You're getting grungy, dirty street rock, and then you got Van Halen coming out saying "party rock
Yeah.
time." And it was, looking back all those years to that show, is
Yeah.
something to see. The shift was changing. Yet I was in the crowd not knowing that. But when Dirt came out at the back end of '92, I bought it, and it's a not only it's a heavy record musically, it's a heavy record lyrically. They're talking about drug abuse, Vietnam. It's not happy rock, which was
No.
dominating the charts 2 years earlier in 1990. I mean, these guys, like I said, they were mean and nasty. Like their vibe on that stage that night in Winnipeg, they weren't smiling,
No.
they weren't high fiving the crowd. Like they
It
were,
was not
hey,
party
this is
rock.
our no, this is our shit, and it don't stink. So deal with it, like, basically, right? And the same thing. Opening four tracks: "Them Bones," "Damn the River," "Rain When I Die," and especially "Down in the Hole" are great opener tracks. And I always liked how they could double track Cantrell and Lane Staley's voice.
Yeah.
Great band, and yeah, I had to give it. I had to throw down some love for Dirt, even though
Yeah.
they don't like the word love.
No. We should be more negative about the album, I guess, to keep it consistent. The them bones, that intro just hooked me in right away with the and you're absolutely
Yeah.
right, that sort of like it's such a signature harmony with their two voices pairing so well, and it
Mhm.
would continue on the next one too. But yeah, great choice, Alice in Chains Dirt. However bleak it is, it's a keeper. It's funny. My next one I had initially had Morrissey's 1992 album, Your Arsenal. But then yesterday, as I was finishing up, I was like, I completely forgot about the Jim Blossoms. So I had to bump Morrissey to make room for the Jim Blossoms and their album New Miserable Experience. And it's one of those ones where we might we had tapes at the time, but probably one of the other main mediums was the tape that a friend made you of their a copy of the album. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I have very fond memories of listening to this one from a friend had recorded it. There was 12 or I learned later there was 12 songs on it. But it's funny because do you remember on those old Maxwell cassettes they'd have the sort of place where you'd write all the things, but then you could fold it open and there was more room to write on it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so the 11 songs were the 11 first tracks were listed and all recorded on side A. And I guess I just wasn't too curious as a youth, and I listened to side A, assumed that was the end of the album, and it was only years later I flipped over the thing and saw there was something on side B as well because they just kept writing it on the insert. And so it turns out there's a 12th song called Cheatin' as well, which is a totally change of pace. It was very sort of country-ish or Nashville-ish, and it wasn't my scene at the time, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it more in hindsight. But I have very fond memories of this audio cassette. I thought the lead singer, Robin Wilson, was just looked like the coolest guy when in the Found Out About You video. It was the sort of songs that as a young guitarist, I found were accessible, like to get the basic rhythm part, and then ambitious to do some of the more lead things.
Yeah.
And I love their the drummer. He had this signature move that I love, where he would often open the hi-hat cymbal a little just at the end of the verse to sort of propel the song into the chorus, which I love those details. And so the Jim Blossom's New Miserable Experience, again, it's one of those great ones where as opposed to Alice in Chains, where the music is sort of and the lyrics are equally heavy. This one, the music's very like jangly, but when you listen to the lyrics, like, oh, they're not so happy after all. But just it pairs neatly, which which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Just going back to my previous pick with Alice in Chains, it was neat to see that trajectory even with my own brother,
Mhm.
because in 1991, he's 14 and really discovering music on his own. Sure, he heard coming out of my room Metallica and Van Halen, Priest and Aerosmith and the regular usual suspects, but he was starting to find stuff in his own. And, you rewind 10 years before that to 1981, and I'm 14 discovering Iron Maiden for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to see everybody's point of discovery of music. I'm always fascinated when I meet people and
Yeah.
they say, yeah, I listen to music. Well, what was your entry point into something?
Yeah.
And they might throw out this oddball album that
Yeah.
sold maybe 10 copies,
Yeah.
but hey, if that impacted you as a listener, there's nothing wrong with that. So
For
yeah, it's
sure.
pretty cool.
Nice. So we've each had our four. The question is, Deke, what
Mhm.
is the fifth one on the list?
Well, the fifth one on my list is, I thought it might be on your list, and it's because you were talking about the Coca-Cola countdown and you mentioned the Black Crowes with Remedy. And that is my pick. Black
Oh,
Crowes
nice.
with Southern Harmony and the Musical Companion. And that album came out in May of 92.
Yeah.
And they actually rolled into Thunder Bay the following April of 93, billed as the High as the Moon tour. And them dudes were high. But they played a great show. But going back to when the album first dropped, and this is, you know, much music again with the video. And, you saw it, I saw it. But when I saw that Remedy video drop, when it opens with the bam, 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 I was like hooked, and I liked the grainy look of the video. I love the debut. So buying the follow up was going to be a no brainer regardless. But holy moly, once I heard Remedy, I was so on board. I mean, it was such a good rock track, but not just Remedy. I mean, Sting Me was a great track. Uh, Sometimes Salvation. I just love that distorted, fuzzed out guitar solo. Like Mark Ford just nails it out of the park on that track. Just that solo. And it's funny, I've heard live versions of it, and the solo just does not sound to me like how it is on the record, because the record, it is just done like so good. It's, you know
Yeah.
what? It's a guitar solo gold, I guess I could call it, and even like the video for Sometimes Salvation, it was like dark video, seedier. It was like a run out drug town part of town and whatnot. Like these bands were not making happy videos anymore with the girls, and the party time videos
Yeah.
were basically out the door. Hotel Illness was another great track. I still remember the show opening with another end of the album gem, and that's No Speak No Slave, just a driving straight ahead rock track. Even the album cover, you look at that album cover with those five guys, they look like they're standing in front of a junkyard, and they're not glammed up. They look
No.
like they're more partied up,
Yeah.
but in a kind of nasty kind of party kind of way, not the happy drugs,
No.
like the seedier side of life, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. And they had the furthest thing away from their look on the debut album, where they almost look like Rod Stewart and the Faces back in the day, more of
Mhm.
a 70s vibe. And now here they are 2 years later, like, they're just looking like ragged, and they're also looking nasty and
Yeah.
mean, and I don't want to say strung out,
Yeah.
but I'll say strung out. But like they just look like road worn guys, and I think of those three album covers on my list: Core,
Yeah.
Stone Temple, Alice in Chains, and Black Crows.
Yeah.
Just look at the scenery of those records.
Yeah.
Even the Alice in Chains. I mean, I think that's supposed to be a woman going in the quicksand on the cover
Mhm.
of Dirt. I mean, and the Black Crow standing in front of a junkyard, a black and white photo, nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
Like whole different, not that eye popping green colors that the hair metal bands were
No.
using in the late 80s to pull in your eye when you'd walk in the store and go, oh, there's a new Poison record because you saw Poison in green,
Yeah.
right? You go in the store and you have to look for the record because these guys are this is nasty. This is nasty right now, but still great songs.
Yeah.
And the album reflects in the production. It's not super polished yet. There's a bit of that, but there's also some roughness to it. And
Yeah.
that's out of these 5 records, Jeff, that I picked, the number one of them would be the Black Crowes. The other ones from 2 to 5 could flip flop, but this would be my number one pick. And you could ask me tomorrow, and I will still say it's my number one pick. But
Yeah.
yeah, so for me, it's the Crows, and like I said, I was glad that they actually came to Thunder Bay on this tour. I
Yeah.
really don't think they knew where they were at that point, but they still put up, still played and put in a good show. And just a little tidbit fact to that concert: the opening act was supposedly supposed to be Izzy Stradlin and the Juju Hounds,
Right.
but Izzy Stradlin was a no-show, and it was the other 3 Juju Hounds that played a set of covers for 45 minutes.
Oh.
Because when we saw the band, we're like, no way, it's Izzy, because they didn't announce an opener. And then they go in the second song, okay, and then the third song, yeah, is Izzy on the bus that he's not coming in, or is he just not doing the tour? I don't know, but we came close.
Yeah.
But
You got the hounds at least.
yeah,
So,
so that was my other concert that I saw in '93, was these guys coming to Thunder Bay. So
oh, that'd be
yeah, it
awesome.
was good time. So yeah, there's my 5 picks.
Love
So
it.
thanks for letting me crash your show again.
Nice. As always, and you're totally right with those album covers. To borrow another REM song, they were not shiny, happy people on the on
No,
these. No, but
no,
it
well said. No,
but
well
it
said.
worked for them, which is good. And see, and for my fifth one, it would fit in that vibe as well. The other one, it occurred to me, I completely forgot about Blind Melon's debut album, where
Right.
the music video, of course, for No Rain was everywhere, but that wasn't necessarily indicative of what the rest of the album sounded like. And it was, yeah, wonderful, wonderful album. Their self-titled debut, and then my other one on my list was sort of a deliberate change from their what some people thought was a glossier production of Nevermind into the very raw and ragged production of Nirvana's In Utero from
Hmm.
1993. And
Yeah.
I really like these ones where it really is when you listen to them in order, you see the different directions the groups take, and this one, yeah, very very heavy, very sort of unpolished, and yeah, really really great. And I love how there's a song later in the album called "Radio Friendly Unit Shifter." That is far from a pop single that's easily consumed by the masses. But yeah,
Yeah.
lots of great stuff on here. My favorites are the opener "Serve the Servants" is really strong. Midway through, there's one called "Francis Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle," and then they also showed like they could do really sort of much more subtle ones, like the song "Dumb" lends itself really nice to the acoustic guitars and some cello and penny royalty. And even it's funny now in at high school, the kids are wearing Nirvana t-shirts again, so it's nice to to see it's fashion is always cyclical, but fun to see those the shirts that I was used to seeing in my elementary school are now back in high school. But that would be my fifth, Nirvana's In Utero from 1993.
And they're just messing with you because they're hoping they can get you off
Okay.
topic one day to talk Nirvana.
It's a pretty good strategy. It's working for them.
I
So.
would say smart kids you got
Yeah.
there, but yeah, that was another big record for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of acts that were still putting out music, but as we know, and I know, it was really changing. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it at the time, as I said, but when all these bands weren't selling, weren't playing arenas. I mean, even in Robert Plant's case, when he toured for Fate of Nations, he went from the previous tour, Manic Nirvana, playing arenas, and 3 years later in Fate of Nations, he's down to 4,000, 5,000 seat theaters, right? So he's even taken a hit, and it's Robert Plant.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of the reason why he decided to pause the solo thing, get back with Page, because there's more money to be made
Sure.
in an arena than a theater.
Yeah.
So I'm sure,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, business is always
Yeah.
part of the equation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. It was such a transitional time where, I guess, and speaking of business, I guess if you could put the label grunge on it, this would be like they saw Nirvana was a hit and they had to find who's going to be the next Nirvana and how can we package this to be grunge because that's what the people seem to want. But then fast forward a year or two and we're into Britpop, and so the whole yeah, it was definitely a moving target over the those early '90s years. But within that time, plenty of good stuff to enjoy
That's
along the
true.
way.
I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
there is still a lot of good music that
Yeah.
still came. I mean, it's just unfortunately a lot of stuff gets pigeonholed,
Sure.
and it wasn't cool to like this band, and
Yeah.
then now they're back playing arenas in 2025, right? Like
Sure.
it's funny how that
Yeah.
cycle goes. The nostalgia. That's basically what it's about. I mean, I look fondly back on those years for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You know,
It's good. The and I what I like about this Deke too is that even though we had some honorable mention overlap, this is the first one where when we do the Venn diagram, it's a blank middle section, which is which is fun because like no two lists are ever the same, but now like in a way that sort of reinforces the argument that there was so much good stuff in 92 and 93 that we couldn't agree on what the five takeaways were. So that's
we
that's a good
came
message.
close. We
Yeah.
came close.
We had yeah.
When you said Remedy, I thought, wow, son of a gun,
Yeah.
we might be onto something there.
That's right. We both mentioned some of each other's artists, but yeah,
Yeah,
but which is I guess the way it should be, which is good.
yeah, that's right.
But a huge thank you for being here again today, Deke, and until round four.
Hey, I look forward to round four, and as always, thanks for letting me in your classroom for a bit.
Cheers.
Cheers, Bell.
This has been the 1000-second album podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.